interesting revelation from where I sit, because clearly she was trying to put huge pressure on my bosses to take action against me.
Why else are you being sort of suspicious and secretive around labor and birth? And people theorized and claimed that the couple needed time to stage a story because Meghan didn't actually deliver the children.
When you have been lied about for a series of years, how hurtful that is.
President Trump also announced a new trade deal with the UK that will reopen British markets for American companies. All that Britain demands in return is that we keep these two.
From where Piers Morgan sits, the situation has always felt calculated. He has repeatedly suggested that immense pressure was placed on his employers to silence him, asking a simple question: why else would someone go to such lengths to shut down scrutiny unless there was something deeply uncomfortable underneath? For years, theories circulated quietly. People questioned why the Sussexes were unusually guarded about labor and birth details, why timelines felt vague, and why announcements appeared oddly staged. Some speculated the couple needed time not for privacy, but to finalize a story. Morgan insists those suspicions were never random. They were born out of patterns that never quite aligned. According to him, the truth surrounding Meghan Markle's pregnancy narrative has slowly begun catching up. And the evidence, he claims, is deeply unsettling. Despite repeated attempts to have him removed from television, Morgan notes that he remains standing, even after being compelled to apologize for publicly doubting Meghan's account. At first, Meghan's pregnancy announcement looked like something out of a modern fairy tale. She appeared radiant, one hand resting gently on her belly, smiling confidently at the cameras. It was meant to be uncomplicated. Celebrate the pregnancy. Capture the moment. Move forward. But almost immediately, royal watchers sensed something was off. Comparisons emerged, most notably with Catherine, Princess of Wales, who famously appeared outside the Lindo wing shortly after giving birth, smiling in heels while holding her newborn. Meghan's appearances, by contrast, began drawing attention for different reasons. It started subtly. One photograph here. Another appearance there. The baby bump appeared fuller one week, noticeably slimmer the next. Higher in one public engagement, lower just days later. At first, supporters brushed it off: angles, clothing choices, posture. Reasonable explanations. But when the inconsistencies repeated again and again, people stopped dismissing them and began documenting them. Morgan argues that disbelief itself is not a crime. People are entitled to question what they're shown. When asked what he would say if he were to sit down with Meghan Markle today, Morgan was direct. He would invite her and Prince Harry to an interview as extensive as the one they gave Oprah Winfrey and ask questions they have never answered publicly. One of the earliest details attributed to Meghan, either directly or through close sources, was her desire for a home birth. It fit her carefully cultivated image perfectly: natural, intimate, calm. Frogmore Cottage was presented as the serene setting for this deeply personal moment. No hospital chaos. No cameras. Just peace. The public accepted this without hesitation. Why wouldn't they? Meghan had positioned herself as someone breaking away from royal rigidity. A home birth felt like the ultimate expression of independence. Then May 6, 2019 arrived, and suddenly, everything changed. Instead of Frogmore Cottage, Meghan reportedly gave birth at the Portland Hospital in London. To be clear, hospital births are entirely normal and often the safest option. That was never the issue. The problem was that no one explained the change. Not a statement. Not a sentence. No reference to medical advice. Nothing. The silence was deafening. When public figures build a narrative around values like natural living and privacy, people expect at least minimal acknowledgement when that narrative collapses. But there was none. The palace offered no clarification. Meghan didn't address it. The story simply pivoted overnight. That abrupt shift caused people to look backward. Interviews were replayed. Appearances were reanalyzed. Statements were reread. Because when one carefully constructed promise disappears without explanation, it raises a deeper question. How solid was the story to begin with? That's when online scrutiny intensified. Once side-by-side comparisons of photographs circulated, the baby bump became the focal point, and it behaved inconsistently. In some appearances, Meghan looked unmistakably pregnant. The bump was round and prominent. She cradled it constantly, moved cautiously, lowered herself into chairs with visible care. In other appearances, sometimes within days, the bump appeared flatter or positioned entirely differently. Critics also pointed to movement. In some clips, Meghan walked gingerly. In others, she climbed stairs quickly, pivoted smoothly, and moved with no visible restriction. Pregnancy affects everyone differently, of course. But the rapid shifts raised eyebrows. This wasn't about one awkward image. It was about repetition. Very pregnant when cameras were front and center, followed by apparent ease when they weren't. Online forums erupted. Comparison videos spread. Comment sections filled with the same question. How does a bump change that much, that fast? When Archie was born at the Portland hospital, the couple delayed their public photo debut by 2 days. Traditionalists criticized the move as breaking with royal transparency. Others accused them of overly controlling the narrative. No one made direct accusations, only observations. But confusion is dangerous. Confusion invites speculation. And when people feel they're being shown one version on camera and another off camera, trust begins to erode. Then came the documents. According to later claims, internal scheduling notes began circulating, records that allegedly tracked Meghan's appointments, movements, and engagements during the pregnancy. If authentic, they didn't merely contradict the public story, they dismantled it. These documents allegedly placed Meghan at public events on days when hospital appointments were logged. Not overlapping schedules. Entire days where the paperwork and photographic evidence did not align. The most damaging claim involved the day of the supposed hospital arrival. The official narrative described a quiet, discreet entrance. But the documents allegedly placed Meghan elsewhere entirely that same day. That was the moment when many stopped saying, "This is strange," and started saying, "This doesn't make sense." Whether the documents were genuine or not, the impact was severe because no one denied them. No corrections were issued. They simply lingered unanswered. Enter Piers Morgan. Unapologetic and energized, he dissected the controversy publicly. On air, he referenced timelines, compared appearances, and accused the entire pregnancy narrative of being stage-managed. His most explosive claim was this: multiple versions of Archie's birth announcement had been drafted before the baby was born. Different scripts, different details, different outcomes, all prepared in advance. Morgan asked a provocative question: who pre-writes motherhood like a public relations rollout? To him, this wasn't about privacy. It was about image control. He argued that the pregnancy wasn't lived, it was produced. And regardless of whether people loved or hated him, one fact remained. Meghan and Harry didn't respond. No denial. No clarification. No pushback. In the world of public controversy, silence doesn't extinguish speculation, it fuels it. The controversy deepened after Meghan described her pregnancy during the Oprah interview as emotionally isolating and marked by neglect from palace staff. She portrayed herself as unsupported and overwhelmed within a cold institution. But leaked internal memos later painted a very different picture. According to those documents, staff were instructed to accommodate Meghan's requests immediately. Schedules were rearranged. Commitments were canceled. Staff reportedly worked extended hours to meet last-minute demands, even after the birth. Some of the most damaging claims involved meetings. Records suggested Meghan declined invitations to briefings, only for those absences to later be framed publicly as exclusion. Critics argued this wasn't a case of doors being closed. It was doors being offered and not entered. Morgan seized on this contradiction, arguing that the institution bent over backward, only to later be accused of cruelty anyway. As silence continued, supporters who once defended Meghan began expressing unease. Online sentiment shifted from "this is media bullying" to "why won't she just explain this?" The longer the silence stretched, the louder the questions grew. What made it more unsettling was Prince Harry's absence. This was a man who built his identity around defending his family from false narratives, yet here, he said nothing. Once doubt took hold, everything was re-examined, including the Oprah interview itself. Morgan dissected Meghan's delivery frame by frame, noting pauses, near tears, and emotional timing. He argued the vulnerability felt practiced, not fake, but rehearsed. Comparing the interview to earlier podcasts and appearances, he claimed the same cadence and emotional arc appeared repeatedly. To him, it wasn't spontaneous, it was performance. This led to his most divisive argument, that motherhood itself had become a shield. Morgan claimed pregnancy and vulnerability were strategically positioned to deter scrutiny. Questioning timelines became cruelty. Asking for clarity became abuse. He didn't argue that pregnancy was fake, he argued it was weaponized. Once that possibility entered the public conversation, the narrative didn't collapse instantly. But it cracked. And cracks spread. By the time all these elements were considered together, the shifting timelines, alleged documents, staged optics, and prolonged silence, the issue had grown beyond pregnancy photos. It became about trust. And when trust erodes, it doesn't disappear loudly. It fades slowly, persistently. Every future claim is examined more closely. Every emotional appeal meets resistance. That is the real fallout. Not embarrassment, not headlines, but credibility. Because once credibility is questioned, it never fully returns to what it was before.